Got it.
Well, Beth can see her if Dan's not looking at the show.
That's a camera.
I know, but I don't know. Dan, are you able to look at the show right now?
I'm not.
See?
Okay.
So it would not fall upon him as funny. So I was explaining it to him.
Okay.
We'll edit that all out, so it will be funny. Hi, Dan.
All right. So, hey, before we get into talking about the Brickyard 400 or whatever they're calling it this year, I know it's one of those name the races. But what do you have any comments about the trucks going to Eldora this week, Dan? I know you don't cover the Camping World Truck Series as a fantasy racing expert, but you are a race fan. What do you think about the trucks going down to Eldora and Tony's little castle down there?
I love it. I think the more
Go from a half-mile dirt track with stock car trucks running on it to the what do we call it? The Brickyard. Indianapolis Motors.
The Crown Royal presents the Samuel Deeds 400 at the Brickyard, powered by BigMachineRecords.com.
Yeah. That's the only thing that's going to be longer than saying that name is going to be that race. So
you better do your yoga exercises before you try to pull that in one breath.
Okay, so we're going to a racetrack that I think is probably fairly predictable. Am I right or am I wrong there?
Yes. Recently, the top 10's been dominated by a couple of drivers, but with the track that's that long, you've got a lot of chances to employ some strategy. It's doesn't take quite as long to get around the track as it does at Pocono, so you can't just pit whenever you want to and know that you're not going to lose a lap, no matter what. But if you're near the front, you're going to see the drivers who are leading. They don't necessarily have to wait to see what the rest of the field is doing and manage their pit stop that way. So it makes it a little bit more of a pure strategy than some of the others. This is not a race for dark horses, although Paul Menard won it a couple of years back, and we've had a few drivers poke their head up in there that really wasn't expected. Jamie McMurray maybe the year that he won it, but he was winning everything else on the big tracks then. Jeff Gordon the first year could be considered a dark horse because he was so new to the circuit. But for the most part, it's the big boys that win the race.
Do you Montoya's never won there. He always seems to run well there. It seems like a track that he's almost destined to break through at some point. Where do you look at JPM this week?
Good dark horse. The traditional wisdom is the road course racer is supposed to run well on flat tracks, and that doesn't play out very often. But it has played out for him here. He was on track to win a couple of years back before the pit road speeding penalty got him. So I think he's probably going to run well. He probably deserves to be on the preliminary roster, maybe in the third or fourth slot to begin with, and then you can move him up if he has a good practice and if he qualifies well. I think this is another one of those tracks where even though it's a long course, the race is relatively short. Track position qualification makes a bit of a difference, and that would be my kicker. Will be my kicker from the weekend. If all things are equal, might as well take a driver who's qualified well. So if Montoya qualifies in the top 10, then I think he'll probably finish there. I think he's got a good chance of being a good dark horse.
Okay, so assuming you're sticking JPM in one of your B slots, what's the rest of your Yahoo team look like this weekend?
The obvious, I think Jimmy Johnson is an obvious choice, but he's too obvious. He's got 4 victories in the last 7 races. But other than that, he only has one other top 10. Usually the problems are there's usually an asterisk behind his poor finishes. He's either crashed or he's had an engine problem or something else has happened that's put him back in the pack. So he's an all-or-nothing driver, but since he's dominated so well, I think you got to handicap him somewhere near the top. But you don't necessarily want to put him on your roster this week because there's been a little unpredictability lately. I think my number 1 driver this week in the Yahoo game is going to be Kevin Harvick. He's easily the hottest driver on the circuit at the moment, 9 consecutive top 10s. And in that same span of time, the closest anybody else has come to matching that has been 4 straight top 10s, and a couple of drivers have done that. He's probably not going to challenge for the victory, but he's definitely going to challenge for a top 5, and that makes him a good pick in A this week because it's going to be dominated by Group A, and track position at the end is probably going to determine who actually does score the most points there. Not something you can predict, so I've got Harvick slotted in number 1, and who knows? He has the right strategy at the end. He surges well at the end. He could very well win the race. Tony Stewart's another good pick there. He's got 4 top 10s, I think, in the last 8 top 10s in the last 9 races there. He almost always wins strong, except for one bad race, which was the tire-killing 2008 race. He's been right there with the leaders, and he has 2 victories, 2005, 2007. So Stewart is probably my second pick, and I'd make it a race day decision based on who practiced the best.
Is there anything about going to Indianapolis that you think could be a surprise this year, or the dark horse guy? I know you picked a couple of dark horse, but is there a super dark horse guy that could come from the ashes and win this thing?
Almirola is good on flat tracks. His strong run in Martinsville earlier, he's had decent runs on the flat tracks all year, so I think he could be someone to watch. Other than that, probably not. This is just not a good race for dark horses. And Montoya, I'm not even sure that he really fits as a dark horse. He should be strong on flat tracks, so he should be on people's radar screens. The fact that he's not has more to do, I think, with the finances or of that team or how what they're doing just at any general time. But he should be strong here, and I think he probably will be. So I wouldn't even necessarily call him a dark horse, just maybe a not expected favorite.
We've got about 2 minutes to go. Dan, can we get through the rest of your B recommendations and who you're looking at from the C category?
Greg Biffle is my top driver in Group B. He's coming into the weekend with 5 straight top 10s. 3 of his last 4 races at Indy have been top 5s. For some reason, he's really good on the flat track, so he's got to be there. Kyle Busch is an all-or-nothing driver, but he has 3 top 10s in the last 3 races, finished runner-up last year to Jimmy Johnson. So those are going to be my 2 top picks in Group B. Slot Montoya in there, slot McMurray in there probably for the provisional roster. He's had strong runs here, won that race not too long ago, so you got to put him there. Down in C, big races, Wood Brothers, you got to give Trevor Bain at least a look and probably put him on the provisional roster so that if he practices well, he can you can start him. Not a time to experiment too much in Group C, so the other driver would probably be Ricky Stenhouse. Roush Fenway's not particularly good on flat tracks, and that would impact them in B for Carl Edwards. But I already pointed out that Biffle's had a strong run there, and Kenseth had a couple of runner-up finishes and the third-place finish on this track as well. So Stenhouse would probably be my second pick. Danica, even for a dark horse. She's been to Indy, different car, but she's comfortable there, and she had a couple of good runs on flat tracks as well. So I'd watch her. Wouldn't necessarily put her on the provisional roster, but wouldn't necessarily exclude her either.
All right, put you on the spot. Who's your pick to win? If you got to pick one of those drivers to roll a dice and win the race.
Tony Stewart.
Yeah.
He's got some momentum on his side. Almost pulled out the victory last week. I think he gets it this week.
All right. He's Dan Beaver. You can follow him on Twitter at Fantasy Race. Read all of his fantasy racing advice and articles at yahoosports.com and nascar.com. Dan, thanks again for your time this week. We look forward to seeing how the picks turn out, and we will talk to you next week.
I look forward to it, as always.
All right, Dan. Thanks.
Dan.
Bye-bye.
All right, so it's the moment of reckoning. Who's your pick?
Brad Keselowski.
Brad Keselowski. Tony Stewart. The Peanut Gallery's picking Tony Stewart. And I'm picking Juan Pablo Montoya. I think this is the time he's finally going to